Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I am so excited about starting this journey with you today. Um, so again, my name is Liz, and I am going to share some different types of art journaling processes with you. So this process, it's about connecting with yourself, connecting with your inner child, connecting with your um, your higher self, your higher knowing, and really getting to know and trust your intuition. So there's no wrong, there's no right. It's just do something. One of the biggest things is don't stop, just keep moving forward. Okay. Everybody's page is going to look different, and that's the beauty of this, is that you get to make this your own. Okay. So I'm going to show you my process, and you get to make it what it needs to be for you. Okay. So today's lesson is about filling your bucket and writing yourself a permission slip. So lots of people do permission slips. Basically, it's a form of telling yourself that you are allowed, you are giving yourself permission to do things that you normally wouldn't do. So for me, one of my biggest hangups or obstacles or struggles is that I fight with perfectionism. And so one of my permission slips is I give myself permission to be wrong. I give myself permission to get messy. And so that's an example of how you can do this. So I'm taking the idea of permission slips and making it about very similar to a children's book that I read to my sons years ago, about filling your bucket. So what we're going to do, what the book is about, is that you do nice things for other people and you fill their buckets. So we're going to turn it on ourselves, and we're going to do nice things for ourselves and fill our own buckets. Okay. So I want you to be aware of questions like, what do you need permission to do? How can you free yourself from limiting beliefs and from self-criticism? And what do you wish you could do without worry and fear? Okay, so those are three big questions to keep in your mind while we do this. So this is my journal. It's very puffy, and I love it. Do open it to any page. I'm just letting it fall open. You do not need to start at the beginning. And what I would like to do first, we're going to keep today very simple, okay? So before we get into this, I'd like you just to lay your hands on your book. And we're going to take 3 breaths together. So I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. And with the first breath in, we're going to breathe in anything that came before this moment. And as you exhale, release anything that you were doing, any rushing around, anything that came before this moment. And with your second breath in, we're going to breathe in anything pulling us into the future. And as you exhale, release all of your expectations, any worries that you have about the future. And with your third and final breath in, we're going to breathe in this moment. And exhale, release. And you can open your eyes when you're ready. And I am going to use one of these pens to get started. It's a Pigma Sensei. Really hard to read because of the gold on it. But it is a waterproof marker. So if you have a Sharpie, that would be perfect. If you have just a regular writing pen, isn't going to run, but you want something that won't run when you put your watercolors on top. Or you don't need to use watercolors. You can use colored pencil. You can use markers. You can use anything you want to color it. but I'm going to draw first with this waterproof marker. And what we're going to draw first is our bucket. And I want my bucket to look like a watering can, because we are going to be nourishing ourselves to grow and be beautiful blooms by the end of the week with our self-care practice. And I love the idea of crossing the page. There is something about the way that our brains work. And when you cross the page, it's like it connects both hemispheres of the brain in some form. I'm not sure if there's any science on that, but I've heard that from my Smashbook teachings, and I really do find it's a different feeling when you cross the page on a journal page versus just coloring one side and then the other. So there's my bucket. And on this bucket, we're going to write something along the lines of, I give myself permission to, or I grant myself permission to, or permission granted, whatever the wording sounds like to you. So I'm going to write, I give myself permission to. Okay. And then we're going to write all the things that we're giving ourselves permission to do above the bucket. So it's going to be like you're filling the bucket with all this goodness, all these permissions, all these things that you're allowing yourself to now do that maybe are difficult for you, that maybe are things that you wouldn't have allowed yourself before, but things that you're really going to open yourself up to this week in your creation. And you can make shapes with it. You can just leave them as little blocks. You can leave them as words, however you want this to look. So I give myself permission to get messy. What else do I want to do? I give myself permission to spend time on me. I give myself permission to play. Let me see what else. Give myself permission to and you can fill up as much of this page or just put a couple of things, whatever feels best to you. And then I like to put also like some little squiggles, like party streamers, Ooh, I like the little swirlies. I'm going to do that. Little confettis. I really want to fill the page, so I'm really digging into those questions. What do I wish I could do without worry or fear? What am I committing to during this web series? I can doodle while I think about this. Adding a few more permissions as they come up. So when you're done, I'm going to just pause here because I feel like this is really what my main intention is for this week, is to play and create time for myself and space for myself and get messy and be free. And I put make mistakes, but really there are no mistakes. This process is so open and easy to change, to reflect whatever you feel like you get to reflect. And I'm going to put, I just feel like some little grass squiggles. A watering can. And now I'm going to turn to my watercolors. Like I said, for you, if you want to use colored pencils, if you want to use markers, you can use your watercolors. We can do whatever you feel like using to color this page. I have just thought of another permission. Give myself permission to use my art supplies. Sometimes I have a tendency, I don't know how you feel, sometimes I have a tendency to treat my art supplies as though they're precious, and I'm afraid of messing them up or using them when it's not a big project. So it's really important to use them, because if you don't use them, then they're not really doing their job, right? And that's when it's a waste, is when you don't use what you have. So I'm going to go with some very bright colors. I've got just a simple set of watercolors. These are by Prang. And yeah, here. And so we're just going to color in your hearts or stars or squares or circles, whatever you've used to write your permissions on. And, ooh, and I just went outside of the line, and that made me think of another thing. Give myself permission to color outside of the lines. So as you can see, this process is very organic and fluid. You can put whatever you want, whenever you want. If you want to come back to your page later today, tomorrow, next week, and there's something else that you want to give yourself permission to do, absolutely 100% do it. It's one of the beauties of Smashbooking is that it's like a living process. So it's not when your page is quote unquote done for the day, that doesn't mean it's done forever. And so you get to decide what serves you best. Yes, absolutely. Be curious. I love that. Permission to be curious. Yes. Hmm. Permission to experiment. And explore. Yes. Permission to explore. I like to hold my brush really loosely because it gives you less control. Maybe that's another one. Permission to release control. What else is coming up for you? I'm so proud of you both for crumpling your pages. I know when I first did it, I cried. Literally. It was pretty funny. Permission to be authentic. Yes. So anytime through this week, when things start to get hard, whether it be during this practice time, whether it be with your family, come back to this page and just look and put your hands on it. And remind yourself you get to have permission to do and be all these things at any time of the day. And by creating this space to create something every day, whether you take 5 minutes or you take an hour, that is going to help to fill your bucket. And maybe that's another permission that I get to put on here. I give myself permission to create. To rest, yes, permission to rest. Like that one. And you see I have a little bit of the paint smudge from gilding the pages and setting up my book. And it just kind of adds a little bit of interest to the page. I love it. And it's with acrylic that we did that, so it's not going to reactivate and blend in with our colors. What color do I want my bucket? What's this one? We have wonderful ideas. And that's one of the things I love about first thing in the morning is like, that's when the ideas are, I find, are easier to come by. It's like I just all of a sudden can think of things because I'm not overthinking it. I'm not in my head. Later in the day when I create, I'm in my head, I'm fighting perfectionism. And whereas in the morning, it's purely our own thoughts. So I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the concept that Julia Cameron wrote about the artist's way. But one of her things is about doing morning pages. And so you spend time first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up, before you turn on any electronics, before you do anything else, and you write. And I think you're supposed to write 5 pages, just stream of consciousness writing. And some of the greatest ideas that you get come from those morning pages and that practice. And if you don't know what to write, then you just literally write, I don't know what to write. And you continue that until something comes to you. But you never stop writing. And I love that idea from a creative standpoint. I love the idea of let's come to the table and paint or color or draw. Even adult coloring is magical because it helps your brain get into that state of very similar to meditation where you're creating the white space for ideas to come to you. And there are actually studies that show where that same brainwave pattern is achieved from coloring or creating as it is when you're meditating. If you allow yourself to go into the zone and totally be swept up in your creations. And I just find that so fascinating. I think it's so cool. Just dropping in some purple underneath my blue to make it darker for where my inside of my bucket is. Oops. And that bled a little bit. Wet, and that's okay. And now the scary part for me, because I would love my page to just be super big and colorful, and I'm always nervous when I like color in a background. Isn't that silly? But there is no right, there is no wrong, it's just how we feel. And recognizing those feelings and allowing them. What color could I use as a background? Lighter blue would be nice, but that's not in my palette. What is this color? Let's go with that. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush because this is going to take a long time with this tiny little brush. How's everybody doing? Great, excellent. Whoops, I almost put my brush in my drinking water. Oh, so if you have a tea or a glass of water, you want to keep that away from your watercolor water because that would not taste good. But it wouldn't be the first time I've done it, and I'm sure it wouldn't be the last either. Something else I did the very first time I did this exercise, when I first made my permission slips, I used to write permission slips on sticky notes, on Post-its, and stick them up around the house. So if you like what you've written and you feel that that would help serve you for the day, you can write them out again. I give myself permission to, or permission granted to, whatever that may be, and have that with you, even in your pocket. Even if you write it on like just a scrap of paper or a recipe card, and you keep it in your pocket, and then you have something physical to touch when you get to a state of feeling like you're stuck or like you're trying to do things properly. Um, Having that permission slip in your pocket just for you. No one has to know about it, but it can be very powerful and very helpful, because it's not always easy to have our journals close to us when we're in the midst of our daily lives to flip back to. Much easier now in the circumstances that we're in, since we're not going out so much. But just some ideas on how you can use this information that you've dug into. And if there's anything else that you feel like coloring in or drawing, I just got this idea. I want a little caterpillar. So once my page dries, I'm going to draw a little caterpillar by my bucket. There we go. That's still pretty wet, but I love the way it's turned out. And if you have, I have these are Pitt pens by Faber-Castell, but they're like metallic, silver, gold, green, and like this, I don't know what to call it, kind of like a pinky purple. Ruby metallic is what they call it. So if you want to do some metallics on top afterwards, if you want to add glitter, whatever you want to do, this page is yours. And you can do whatever you want with it. Once it dries. So I'm going to flip back up to me. Hello. While this is drying, so that you're not just staring at a page, come back to it when you feel stuck, when you feel like something isn't quite sitting right for you, when you feel like you're not allowed. Come back to this, especially if time is something that's on your mind right now and you're not allowing yourself time for yourself, or if you're very hard on yourself. Come back to this page, and sometimes just sitting and putting your hands on the page and taking a couple of breaths can really ground and center you, and then help you go on with your day, because you are allowed to have everything on this page and then some. Okay, so thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful, with that being said, to have you here, and I'm excited to see what you created. So thank you.